And now, for our final roundtable of the evening, entitled Law Firm Management in the Pandemic, please welcome Michelle Harrell, Linda Paullin-Hebden, Jonathan Martone, Powell Miller, and moderator Bernie Fuhs.
Welcome, welcome. You know, they say they save the best for last, but the rumor is they've saved the worst for last, but we'll embrace it regardless. Great job, everybody. Fantastic day. Again, I will echo Powell from the previous segment. Kudos to Mark Rossman, Sean Fitzpatrick, and their groups for a fantastic night, fantastic evening, 6 hours of great program. Good to see everybody in person. A few people obviously online, but I think we're making our way into a little bit of a normalcy. It's good to see the faces. So my name is Bernie Fuhs. Welcome to Law Firm Management in the Pandemic. I will introduce the panel here, but actually I'm going to have them introduce themselves. But the rules are you get to say your name, you get to say the firm you're with, and one fun fact about yourself. Only caveat, Powell, you cannot talk about any collector items, okay? Okay. I'll start. My name is Bernie Fuhs. I'm a business litigator and on the board of directors for Butzel Long the past 3 years. One fun fact about myself is when I was in law school, struggling, I ran my own little business. It was a speed dating company. So I was an entrepreneur at heart, and life has considerably changed 20 years since then. I'll kick it to you, Michelle. You can introduce yourself. Go for it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Harrell. I'm on the executive committee and I run the complex litigation group at Madden Hauser in Southfield. I've been there since 2007. Fun fact about me, today's my birthday. So I spend it with all you, my best friends here. So
29 years old and strong, right?
That's right.
Powell, go for it.
I'm Powell Miller, and then the fun fact would be my name, Powell Miller. I've tried a lot of cases, but I can't think of one trial where at some point the judge didn't call me Mr. Powell.
Linda?
And with two last names.
I do have two last names. I'm Linda Paullin-Hebden. I'm the executive partner of the Detroit and Bloomfield Hills offices of Warner, Norcross, and Judd. And really, is there fun in lawyers? But here's, what I'll try and give you. A few years ago, I decided to start taking more adventurous trips. And in 2021, I got dropped into a Costa Rican surf camp and learned how to surf.
Well, good evening. My name is Jonathan Martone. I'm a partner with Clark Hill out of their Birmingham office. And the fun fact that I would say is I have the dubious distinction of being kicked off of Bernie's speed dating website. I in my spare time, I like to play guitar, albeit not very well, but that's something I enjoy doing.
The crazy thing is, I don't know if that's true or false. It is possibly true. So law firm management, it has been quite the adventure. It's been really cool and interesting to see, especially that last segment, some of the smaller entrepreneurs and what you guys have experienced. Butzel Long being the second oldest firm has been quite interesting and creative to try to get a older law firm to kind of move that ship towards TikTok and the likes of those things, although we're trying. Michelle, I want to start with you. You are at a fairly mid-sized firm, 50 plus attorneys, 100 plus employees, so many things to talk about, but I guess in terms of managing that firm, what's been your biggest challenge and how have you dealt with it?
Our biggest challenge because of the pandemic was that it was literally like a panicdemic, right? We had clients that were just in a state of chaos, and it was our job to give them legal advice and take care of them and keeping that communication open with them. But at the same time, bridging the gap with our people. Our people were upset, scared that the office was closing, that this exceeded anything else. In fact, that it involved their families. And in the beginning, there was real worries that people could die from this. So it was really the bridging between those two things that I found to be the most difficult in managing, because we had it coming at us from both sides. So, what we just did was to keep open communication with clients, Lucky for us, we had an emergency plan that we had for years at the firm, but it was really meant to be like if our building exploded or something, right? Not COVID or a pandemic. And so we were able to implement that. And lucky for us, we had just had a technology upgrade. And a lot of our attorneys already used Zoom and Loop Up, and they were familiar, so they could teach those of us who didn't know what they were doing. So we were able to keep in touch with clients. We also had a strong employment group that managed to follow all the changing regulations. You know, Governor Whitmer kept issuing things. The health department was doing something else. The CDC was somewhere else, and it was changing every day. So keeping up with that and what that all meant for our clients. And then, of course, my practice is real estate. So clients were worried about their lease, force majeure. Suddenly they had to dust off those documents and read them. So we were on a 911 all the time. So I think it's the bridging, keeping staff going, feeling safe, and then also keeping client serviced was the biggest challenge.
I want to piggyback off that. Powell, I'll go to you. At the previous segment, you talked about certainly your collection, engaging with clients, and some other creative ways that you've really tried to get through the pandemic. In terms of internally and your employees, how have you managed that? Any creative ways you've dealt with your employees to keep them inspired, keep them engaged? Just given all the fear factor that obviously Michelle touched on.
Yeah, absolutely. When the crisis first hit, it was terrifying. Law.com was reporting that many firms were laying off people, cutting salaries. My most senior partner, Mark Newman, and wonderful friend, we immediately decided that the way we were going to get through this crisis is we were going to lower our compensation to zero, but no one in the firm was going to get hurt. So we had a Zoom call with everybody in the firm, and we told them that we're now working for you. We are taking zero pay. I guarantee you, we're going to get to the other side. We're going to survive. We're going to thrive. No one is going to be laid off. No one is going to have their salary cut. And then I was thrilled a year later to tell everybody, not only did we keep our promise, but our firm is stronger now than it was before COVID hit. And just in early January, I gave my State of the Firm report to everybody by Zoom and said, now our reserves are at the highest point in the history of the firm 2 years into COVID. Because I believe that we invest in our talented lawyers. We show our confidence in them that we're going to do great no matter what happens. And that's exactly what happened. I think that disaster creates opportunity, and you just have to find it. And I am so proud of the lawyers and staff who work for me because they found the opportunity and they seized it, and our firm is stronger than it's ever been.
Got to say, his enthusiasm is really infectious, especially at 9 o'clock at night. I love it. I love it. Linda, I want to go over to you. I'm going to switch gears a little bit from what we had talked about. Real estate. We've talked a lot about work from home. You are 230 attorneys, 400 employees. I know you guys rolled out a brand new office right around the time the pandemic hit. I guess, how have you dealt with kind of the real estate component versus the work from home component and manage that now and how you manage it going forward?
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, we are in the building next to Little Caesars Arena, and we took on that space well before the pandemic. We built it out, and our space was actually delayed because, as I think you may recall, there was a stop to all construction. So that meant that our lease was up, and we were in the Southfield Town Center. Our lease was up. Landlord decided not to allow us to stay over. And so we actually moved twice. We moved because we're now all working from home. We moved from the town center into Travelers, took a smaller footprint and just used that space as visiting attorney office. And everybody worked really hard to make that happen. It just was something that we could never have anticipated. Our construction was delayed because of the pandemic. And we just kind of rolled with that. So then you have this brand new space. And a lot of people have asked me, well, we have designed that in the same way had we done it after the pandemic. And the great thing about what we did is when we were designing the space, we thought a lot about how we interact with clients and how we were going to interact with clients in the future. And for me, in my practice, I was already doing Zoom calls and meetings well before the pandemic. And I believe that our interactions with clients would be more intentional, less meetings, but we would have to find ways to bring clients into our office, which is part of why we picked a location near the entertainment district in Detroit. And also we designed our space so that we can entertain clients in our space, which hasn't quite happened yet because of the pandemic, but that still will be valuable. And now what we're talking about is how can we maximize the offices? So, a lot of people have talked about remote work. We think that will be a thing, but then do you need a dedicated office? Can you office share? Can I take space that would normally accommodate 60 attorneys and turn that into 90 attorneys? Probably. So it's all about being flexible and really having kind of a vision to maximize what we have.
I think flexibility that's a big word. I think that's been a common word, whether you're big or small, is being able to adapt to the changes. I mean, we at Butzel, we cut our footprint in half. We've gone to more of a glass office, more of a tech space, which a lot of lawyers have to get used to. But we kind of recognize that, look, if brick and mortar is expensive, it hits the bottom line, but we still want to provide that community, and it's a balancing act. Jonathan, I want to go to you. One of the things near and dear to my heart, and I know you too, is mentoring and really bringing up our younger attorneys. I think those of us who are a little bit more seasoned were maybe a little had an advantage to adapt when we had to go remote, had to go on Zoom. We kind of had those relationships built up. The younger attorneys, it was tough, especially the ones that you just got brought aboard. They really need that face-to-face mentoring and interaction. And it's still tough to this day. How have you and Clark Hill, especially, you guys are all over the map. How have you managed that, and how are you guys approaching that?
Sure. No, that's a fantastic question. And, there's aspects and elements of it that do touch upon just flexibility, but three things sort of come to mind. And I'm going to say this, I suppose, from the perspective of trying to mentor and impart skill sets onto these associates that aren't not only legal skill sets, but also, from life and culture skill sets that are things that are helpful to know as you matriculate up and grow in your career. The first thing that comes to mind, and obviously understanding that, health and safety comes first, but ultimately encouraging these associates to still, even if they're working remotely, come into the office from time to time. Out of sight sometimes is out of mind, and it's really difficult to overcome. And so having that rapport and certainly hopefully having them still come in to build that camaraderie. I know that's something that's important, at least in our Birmingham office, which has at least 50 attorneys. And I know that's something that's also put into place in our Detroit office. Secondly, and this goes to both associates, but also partners and more senior attorneys, is being proactive, reaching out to younger attorneys, whether it's on an impromptu basis or it's a standing call, but checking in with them. I think that goes a long way. And certainly it's hopefully a somewhat decent substitute for what I experienced, which was either myself walking down the hall and passing a partner's office and them calling me in there, or vice versa, peeking my head up when they walked by, but having that connection and having that discussion about a work project or just how it's going at the firm. And then thirdly, what comes to mind also, and this is again, from my perspective of being a partner and trying to engage associates, is bringing associates on to files that perhaps normally I would have just handled myself. And, I think one of the interesting things, and I know we've discussed this, Bernie, that I've had to sort of adjust to is the economics of how some of these litigation cases go, because we're not having the drive times and the sitting in court for 4 or 5 hours, which obviously has benefits to the clients. But it also, in some respects, makes the opportunity to bring on an associate also a more cost-effective experience for the client, but also gives these associates opportunities to get involved, perhaps in cases they may not have already been privy to. So that's something I think that can be utilized. I mean, again, I do agree that there's going to have to be some flexibility and some adaptation to this situation, but having that human interaction, that connection, I think that will never go away. I think there's still incredible importance to that, and especially at a young age when associates are looking for mentorship, I think that still needs to occur.
So I want to piggyback on that, and it's the 9 o'clock hour. Let's kind of keep it real. With younger attorneys, one thing we've seen in the last year or two, especially recently, inflation. And I think we saw this in the last 6 months to a year. East and West Coast firms, especially at the bigger level, raising those first year salaries. We had saw that pre Great Recession, 2006, 2007, and things took a hit. And now we started to happen on the East Coast and the West Coast. Those first year salaries are raising, and it's really made itself here into the Midwest. Even us at Butts Along, we've had to adapt. We went from number 7, number 8, we jumped ourselves at the time to number 2. And even at the last 2 months, that's changed. So from a law firm management perspective, Jonathan, I'll start with you too, because you guys have 26 offices and you're all over the map. How have you guys dealt with and managed those increasing demand for higher salaries versus paying your performers and your top people? That's one of the things we have as business owners and running a law firm is splitting your pie and running a business. How have you guys, I guess, approach that?
Well, your question is actually very timely. We had our annual shareholder meeting actually this morning, our first one, and that was one of the first topics we talked about. And there was a study presented to the partners that compensation, while it's a predominant factor in young associate recruiting and hiring, it is not the only factor. And I know some other speakers touched on it earlier, but that there are certain other value adds that law firms can give to attract high talent. That being said, I do agree, and I think if our CFO was here, he would also say that across the board, Clark Hill, like many other large law firms, are having to pay more to attract top talent. However, as we've also discussed a little bit here, with the pandemic, it's offered an opportunity for some right sizing, whether it's real estate or re-examining other ways that the firm may be spending its resources. And so I think I can speak, at least from my experience, that Clark Hill has found a way to run more efficiently. And that's even considering the larger percentages that are being paid for salary. It's an investment in our talent, it's an investment in our people. So I know it's something that the firm certainly stands behind and does. And it's looking for ways to hopefully still be competitive and look for other ways to really attract young people without necessarily saying that we have to just pay the highest dollar.
Anybody else want to touch on that? Linda, Powell?
I'm happy to address that. I mean, the way I looked at it is when the pandemic hit and many firms were cutting salaries and laying people off, we stayed focused on our long-term plan, which is to build a great firm. Likewise, if because of the pandemic, private equity took off, for example, so some of the East Coast firms to attract lawyers in the private equity departments started dramatically increasing the amount of salary that they would pay to them. We're dismissive of that because what we want to do is worry about what we're doing, not what some other firm is doing, and build something special. And what we also are very wary of, a lot of those firms that tease with high early salaries, they take it out of the hide of those associates in year 2, 3, and 4. In year 6, say, hey, what business do you have now? You don't have business? Well, goodbye. We want to find someone who does. We are building our own culture of excellence that brings high quality cases, high dollar value cases. I call it raising the water level so that everybody benefits. The younger associates, the mid-level people, and the partners. The better our firm does, the more everybody's going to benefit.
Linda, you want to touch on it?
Yeah, so we raised our associate salaries. I'm not going to hide that because we need to stay competitive to get top talent. But the reason why associates come to Warner is because of our culture. We're a lockstep firm. We're very collegial. Our hour requirement is less than what other big firms have. We are more, we promote work-life balance. And that doesn't mean that we don't do quality work. We do great work. We have great cases. But, you know, for example, I'm working on a deal right now, and my colleague is home. Her husband has COVID. So her son can't be exposed to him. Her son, though, can't be in daycare. And we're going to take care of that. We're going to make sure that she has the resources she needs, and we're not going to put demands on her to, you know, that are unreasonable. So, you know, I think for us at Warner, we have a culture that is different than a lot of other firms, and we provide competitive salaries, but you come to Warner for our culture, not for the salary.
Michelle, did you want to add anything or?
Yeah. So being in a mid-sized firm, we have like Powell's firm too is a unique firm. So sure, you can get into bidding wars over associates, but you know, if they're really going to just follow the dollar, you question whether that's someone you really want, because it's very hard to get loyalty from someone like that if they're just going to chase the next highest number. So from a recruiting standpoint and retention standpoint, we focus again, the hot word now is culture, but you know, at Madden and at these other firms too that are up here, that's a real concept. So do you want to crank out 2,200 hours a year and have no outside life, or do you want to have lower billable requirements and have support when you're out in the community and, you know, caring about your family life? So, you know, there's other things that go into having someone have a good experience as an associate. And, you know, my view has always been that when you start your career as a lawyer, it's a long game. You know, if you're going to chase the dollar up front, you're looking, I think, at the wrong things. You need to look at your mentors that you're going to have at the firm, you know, whether the firm is going to care about you if something goes wrong in your life, and if they're going to develop you as an attorney, or if they're just going to burn you out like a cigarette and then throw you away. So you really need to look at those factors. So I don't think it's just the dollar anymore. I think that generation is looking at the big picture. They like pro bono work too. They're very socially conscious. And, you know, as a firm and growing and evolving, that's very important to be involved in the community as well. So
Yeah, it's different strokes for different folks, but you know, yeah, you hit it right on. We're approaching 9:30. I want to stay with a hot topic. This is not meant to be political, but in society these days, everything is political. I've learned a lot in terms of, you know, running a law firm the last 3 years. One of the big things I've learned is that no matter what we do, you can't make everybody happy. We rolled out a new logo. We picked red. Half the firm loved it. Half the firm, what are you doing? Lawyers are opinionated. You'd be surprised. They've got their own perspectives on things. I think we all kind of rolled out and watched the whole OSHA mandate and the litigation play out over the last few weeks. After that mandate came out, Butzel made a decision to go with it being optional. If you want to wear a mask, if you want to be vaccinated, it's your choice, but we weren't going to require it. A lot of companies and firms out there have mandated it. Some companies have rolled it back. It's really a mix. I'll kick it to you guys. How have you guys navigated the mandates, both federally, locally? Some of you have firms outside of Michigan as well. How are you guys dealing with that and really, you know, managing lawyer personalities and really over employee personalities? That Michelle, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So, you know, we've been riding the riptide of one thing's required one week, one's required the next week. Staff and attorneys all had different political feelings, health requirements. It was all over the board. We did not have a mandate. You know, we had hoped that people would voluntarily vaccinate on their own, just because we did a survey inside to see what people would make them feel safe at work. But it wasn't top down, it was more bottom up. And over time, I think a lot of people got vaccinated. We followed the health department requirements that said if you don't, that's up to you, but you're going to have to follow the rules with masking and social distance and stay in your office. And, eventually I think people got kind of tired of that. So I think we're almost 100% vaccinated now, but we stayed out of the political issue. We made it more of a personal choice.
How about you guys?
We did not have a formal requirement, but strongly encouraged people in their own self-interest to get vaccinated. First thing we did was reduce the density in our offices. We have a group of staff attorneys who we value very much, but we asked them to work at home. We put the staff in attorney offices so that they would be further away from people. And the best thing we did is we had a vaccine party. We had a nurse come in from Rite Aid with boosters for Moderna, boosters for Pfizer, shingles shots, pneumonia shots.
All at the same time?
Yep, all for free. And we became pincushions. But generally, what we've done is just to try to persuade people that it's the right thing to do, lead by example. And fortunately, we have a very collegial firm, and I think we are very close to 100%. I can't say 100% for sure, but pretty darn close.
Linda, you want to touch on it?
Yeah, we're very similar. We have done so many things to encourage vaccination. We've given staff time off to go get vaccinated. We brought someone in to give boosters. We follow the guidance, but we really, it is a personal choice. So, we just ask that people be respectful of each other, and that's worked pretty well.
Jonathan, you guys have offices all over the place and different restrictions. How about you guys?
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to say. When I first joined Clark Hill back in 2009 as an attorney, we obviously had a much smaller footprint. And as we've grown, I think the intention and the size and the organization behind responding to things like this has also grown. So we had a whole task force within Clark Hill that was responsive to all of this. They monitored it. They obviously were up to date and up to speed and all the different jurisdictions. And so, I certainly can't speak to necessarily what was occurring on the ground at every one of our offices. I know here in Birmingham, though, in the Birmingham office, we certainly were following all federal mandates, all local mandates, most recently. And so up until the decision that came out, I know that we had in place a vaccine policy that if an individual wasn't vaccinated, they had to test weekly, I believe it was. I mean, there's a whole protocol that was otherwise put into place. My understanding is that's put on pause now because of this new decision, but it's still certainly something that's highly encouraged. But I think to echo what I've heard, my colleagues here speak about was that congeniality, caring about, your coworkers. I do think that regardless of whatever the firm suggests or mandates, that's still at the heart of everyone, at least that I come across at Clark Hill. So I don't think that anyone, wants to make someone feel uncomfortable. And I, at least again, speaking from my experience in the Birmingham office, once, the work from home restrictions were lifted back in June of 2020, there was a small core contingency of people that wanted to come back, and they were provided the opportunity to, but certainly the firm has been incredibly flexible to find workable solutions for people that didn't feel comfortable, that needed alternative work solutions. So I've been really pleased and proud to see that develop at Clark Hill.
Yeah, it's a tough topic, and I really appreciate you guys addressing it. I mean, again, I think most of the firms are pretty similar. I mean, we achieved a 90% vaccination rate without it being mandatory, and it's tough. And when a variety of factors play into it, we looked at it through multiple angles. But even when you look at the DEI lens of it and who it would affect, even if it's 10% of the population, when we actually looked at it, it would disproportionately affect a good minority population and female population. And we encourage it, but at the end of the day, we've kind of settled on it's a choice. You got to make what's the best decision for you. We're just about up on time. We got about 1 minute. Real quick, I'll do fire squad. Personally, has your leadership approach or style changed in the last 2 years? Michelle, I'll start with you.
I have to say yes. I've become much more flexible with deadlines and taking into account more people's requirements at home and other things like that, and just trying to be more flexible overall, and give people lots of time to get their assignments done.
Powell?
Yeah, I would say in the sense that I've really focused on understanding and respecting that everybody has their own unique DNA and no one size fits all. And then it's my job as a leader to recognize that, assist people in strengthening their strengths and compensating for their weaknesses, but not trying to turn everybody into an automaton. We respect that everybody's different, wonderfully different.
Automaton. I don't know if I've ever heard that word. That's really good. Lexicon, noted. Linda?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've changed is, we talk a lot about culture. And in some respects, we all think culture just happens in the office. But culture can happen through intentional acts. And so I've been much more mindful of how we are intentional about building our culture through things that don't require just showing up at the office.
And Jonathan, we'll end with you.
Pressure there. And I touched on this earlier. For me personally, the last few years, I've made a concerted effort to be more intentional in my opportunities to reach out to younger attorneys, to make that sort of connection, to check in, to see how they're doing, to see if I can, again, involve them in ways that they feel like they're having a meaningful contribution to a case or to a project, and hopefully also feel engaged while they may not be physically here, they may not be interacting with the same number of attorneys that they traditionally would have.
All right. Well, I want to thank our panel. I thought they were authentic, and I think it's a word that Alexis used, vulnerable. Those are tough questions, but I appreciate you guys attacking it. And thanks to the rest of you. I appreciate everything. Thank you.